Hello, and thanks for watching our January 2025 Hatfield Museum and History Society Community Program presentation. I'm Larry Stevens, President of the Society. This program is titled History of the Montgomery County Fair, which was held here in Hatfield, Pennsylvania for a good number of years. But first, a bit of fair history. The traditions of fairs in the New World of North America began in 1765, 11 years before the nation was even founded. America's very first fair, the York Fair, was held in York, Pennsylvania, just about 100 miles from here. Thomas Penn, the son of William Penn, granted a charter to the good people of York to hold the fair in recognition of the flourishing state to which the town hath arrived through their industry. That very first fair was a 2-day agricultural market on the town commons and was reported to have been the liveliest day of the whole year. 85 years later, in 1850, the Montgomery County Agricultural Society was organized with the purpose to cherish and promote agricultural, horticultural, and the domestic arts, and to disseminate scientific knowledge thereon. The group was based in Springtown, near the intersection of Germantown Pike and DeKalb Pike in East Norton. That was also the location of the very first Montgomery County Fair, which was held that same year, 1850. The fair continued to be held at that location through to 1869. Apparently, other county fairs throughout the state during this time were finding that horse racing helped to bring in the crowds. And so in 1870, the Agricultural Society moved the county fair to Ambler, where there was a large 1/2 mile racetrack. The society purchased a 35-acre tract of land for the fair, with convenient access from both the Ambler train station and the Bethlehem Turnpike. The fair continued there in Ambler until 1884, after which it appears that the society ceased to exist. By 1890, the Montgomery County Fair was being held in Pottstown, who also had a racetrack, where it seems to have remained through at least 1906. By then, in addition to horse racing, there were now races on bicycles, which were starting to gain popularity at that time. In 1908, the first inter-county fair, a fair for both Montgomery and Bucks counties, was held in Hatfield Township in the sleepy little village of Trewigtown. Once known as Hatfield Square, the village of Trewigtown was located on the Bethlehem Pike, about halfway between the villages of Calmer and Line Lexington. Trewigtown was felt to be an ideal location geographically, since it was equal distance from the northern edge of Bucks County and the southern edge of Montgomery County, and it was midway between the Delaware and Schuylkill rivers. Also, the price of land there was rather low, it seems. The fair site, consisting of about 40 acres of nearly level farmland, was also quite conveniently located approximately 1/2 mile north of the Calmer train station. It was also said that Trewigtown's elevation provided a nice view of the surrounding countryside for miles around, and that a number of neighboring towns, including North Wales, Lansdale, Hatfield, Souderton, Chalfont, and Doylestown, were all visible from the roof of the Trewigtown Hotel, seen here, which was located in the village. It is also possible that there was interest in holding a fair which was less focused on horse racing and more on agricultural exhibits, which was, after all, the original purpose of the fair. The 1908 Trewigtown Fair was only a 1-day event, but it reportedly was a great success, with exhibits of livestock, fruits and vegetables and other agricultural products, and farm wives' kitchen skills. An estimated crowd of about 5,000 visitors attended the fair that year. Encouraged by the success of the 1908 fair, the 1909 Inter-County Fair at Trewigtown was expanded to a 4-day event held from October 5th to the 8th. A parade from the Calmer train station to the fairgrounds was held at 10 o'clock each morning of the fair, with exhibits from the fair and floats sponsored by merchants and exhibitors. A field between the hotel and the train station was used for parking automobiles, which were becoming more and more popular by then. On the fairgrounds, a number of buildings were erected to house the swine, sheep, goats, and other livestock animals. A large poultry house, 35 by 70 feet in size, was built on the property, and many folks flocked to see the chickens, some of which had previously been awarded prizes at the Allentown Fair. The Hatfield History Museum is fortunate to have a number of items from the Trewigtown Fair in its collection. George B. Schellenberger was apparently quite the chicken enthusiast and traveled all over Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, entering his chickens in various agricultural fairs. These ribbons from the 1909 and 1910 Trewigtown Fair are just a few of the 100 or so fair ribbons that Schellenberger won, so he must have had some pretty nice chickens. And here's a trophy that George Schellenberger's chickens won at the Trewigtown Fair in 1910, the W.T. Patterson Cup for Best Display of Plymouth Rock Chickens. And that's a Plymouth Rock chicken there on the right for those of you unfamiliar with the breed. Tents were pitched on the fairgrounds for the display of fair exhibits, and an orchard in the rear of the hotel was used for refreshment stands. This 1909 photo is the only one that exists that we know of that was taken at the Trewigtown Fair. It shows a refreshment stand known as the Palace Restaurant that Hatfield's D.L.O. Culp operated that year at the fair. That's proprietor Dillman Culp in the white jacket standing behind the counter. Amusements and sideshow features were also provided, but to help keep the fair on a more wholesome level, gambling devices of all kinds were strictly prohibited anywhere near the fairgrounds. A large field was used for the exhibition of agricultural machinery, including a mechanical milker, perhaps this model here, patented in 1907, so that local farmers and dairymen could observe 12 cows being milked in just 5 minutes. Threshers, binders, baggers, balers, mowers, husking machines, and corn harvesters were all on exhibit and demonstrated daily. A plow, capable of plowing 6 furrows at a time, with rollers and harrows following, was demonstrated for farmers. Road machinery, dairy machinery, and other inventions designed to ease the labor of farmers were also on display. Companies that manufactured manure spreaders also demonstrated the use of their machinery, which was likely one of the more popular fair attractions for the farming community. Special events were planned for each day of the fair, with the leading feature event being the special milkmaids race. This was reportedly a highly contested event, with women vying for the title of Montgomery County Champion Milkmaid, and of course, the accompanying trophy. Now, maybe some of you are familiar with the milkmaid race, but I had to do some research to learn just what it was all about. It seems, though, that there were at least 2 different versions of the race. One seemed to be an actual test of milking skill and speed, but another version seemed to be less about skill and more about entertainment, with pretty young milkmaids running 75 yards to a waiting cow with a milking stool in one hand and a milk pail in the other, just to see who would be the first to get into the approved milking position. In some of these races, the winner could walk away with a half-grown calf, a nanny goat, or a pot of old-fashioned apple butter. Which version of the milkmaid race was run at the Trewigtown Fair is unknown, but all accounts indicate that it was surely a high point of the week. An athletic field was laid out on the fairgrounds for track and field events, and speed contests and races of all kinds were held. There was even some horse races held up and down the dirt Bethlehem Pike. And each day of the fair, there was at least one baseball game held between first-class amateur teams. At the nearby Trewigtown schoolhouse, various items, both culinary and fancy work, made by farmers' wives, were on exhibit. It appears that the 1909 Trewigtown Fair was a big success, and the following year's 1910 fair was said to have been such a great event that it was almost as good as the big city fairs like the Allentown, Trenton, and Reading fairs. Now that is saying something. It seems that there may have been a lot of complaining, though, about the lack of horse racing at the Trewigtown Fair, because the 1911 fair was moved back to Pottstown, where once again horse racing became a prominent feature of the event. The fair continued through 1917, but the challenges of World War I as well as the Spanish flu epidemic caused the 1918 fair to be canceled. The fair wasn't held again until 1925, when it opened on the grounds of the 4-year-old Hatfield Driving Club Park, Hatfield's horse racing track, located off of 40-foot road in Hatfield Township. Here's a photo of the racetrack's horse-drawn water wagon advertising the dates of the 1925 Montgomery County Fair. According to newspaper accounts, the 5-day 1925 fair had agricultural exhibits galore. In fact, it was said that the 1925 fair was more elaborate than anything ever held before in the county, with an entry list so large that 6 additional secretaries were hired to assist in compiling all the records. Horse racing continued to be a big draw for the county fair, with harness racing programs held almost every day during Fair Week. Large crowds packed the grandstands to watch 105 horses participate in the various races that week. It's interesting to note this incident that occurred during the 1925 fair. On Friday evening, several people complained to fair officials that they had been robbed in the fortune teller's tent operated by a number of gypsies. An official with a marked $10 bill was sent into the tent, and when he emerged, the bill was missing. The gypsies were taken to the fair office, and the marked money was found. The gypsies were immediately taken to the Hatfield train station and sent out of town. The final evening of the 1925 Fair Week was topped off with automobile racing, which was quickly gaining on horse racing in popularity. The following summer, based on the huge success of the first fair, the Fair Association started planning for an even bigger event. An article in the June 1926 Hatfield Times newspaper was headlined, "Fair Association will erect new building, and exhibits will be greater than 1925. The article reported that plans for a bigger and better Montgomery County Fair were in the works, including the construction of another permanent exhibition building. The new building would be used to house poultry, horses, and cattle, and would eliminate the use of a large tent, which, apparently, was not entirely satisfactory the previous year. It was expected that there would be twice the number of fair entries as the prior year. An added attraction, and an incentive to attract good racehorses to Hatfield during Fair Week, was a special prize of $100 offered for the horse who could run a mile in less than 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Arrangements were made to have a large display of fireworks 3 nights during the week, with the fair's closing night fireworks expected to be the most beautiful. The Burns Detective Agency was again engaged to render its services for the 1926 fair, keeping undesirables from the premises. Music for Fair Week would be provided by 20-piece bands during the day and smaller groups at night. The 1926 fair was another big success, as was the fair the following year in 1927. And there were so many entrants in the many various contests in the 1927 fair in categories such as grain and hay, vegetables, flowers, poultry, and many other aspects of the home economics that judges needed an extra 2 days to award the hundreds of prizes. This photo from one of the early fairs shows a Case tractor participating in a hill climbing exhibition. This is the George S. Snyder booth at the 1927 fair. The fair was a great marketing opportunity for local businesses and organizations. And if I remember correctly, this same booth was later used to serve 10-cent hot dogs and drinks during Snyderama events. Here's a sign promoting the 1929 Montgomery County Fair, which was held from September 2nd to the 7th that year. And here's the cover of the official catalog for the County Fair Horse Show that year, 1929. Here's some ribbons that were awarded during the Montgomery County Fairs from 1927 to 1933. Over the years, the fair continued to grow, and it was always the biggest event of the year for Hatfield residents. The Montgomery County Fair had become a Hatfield tradition. Now here's something you don't see every day: a goat wearing sunglasses pulling a cart. This unusual photo was snapped during the 1934 Montgomery County Fair. Shown with the goat cart are, left to right, Lee Weber, Merle Weber, and Richard Weber. In 1935, the Montgomery County Fair Association completed renovations of the fairgrounds and erected several more new buildings to accommodate the ever-growing event. Big premiums were announced for all livestock exhibits, which included exhibits of cattle, sheep, hogs, farm produce, poultry, pigeons, rabbits, and guinea pigs. On Children's Day, all school children were admitted free, and a pony was given away to the child holding a lucky number on their admission ticket. There was also a Farmer's Day with real old-time fun, like mule races and greased pigs. Here's a photo of the Elm Terrace Hospital Auxiliary booth taken at a fair around 1936. In 1934, Dr. Frank E. Boston, a local physician, established Elm Terrace Hospital, a privately owned hospital in Lansdale located at Broad and 7th Streets. At the time, the hospital had 23 beds. In 1939, the hospital was established as a non-profit facility and renamed North Penn Hospital. Fair organizers pulled out all the stops for the 1940 Montgomery County Fair when they arranged to have the Tom Mix Show as the main attraction. For your younger folks out there, Tom Mix was the first Western hero to rise to superstardom as a movie cowboy. Mix was born in 1881 here in Pennsylvania, then ventured west as a young man, serving as a federal marshal and also as a member of the Texas Rangers. In 1910, he appeared in his first silent movie and soon skyrocketed to stardom and became known worldwide for his horsemanship and stunts. By the early 1930s, though, talking films had become the norm. Mix did star in a few talkies, but his career soon faded as singing cowboys like Gene Autry and Roy Rogers became more popular. Mix appeared in his last film, The Miracle Rider, in 1935. After retiring from the silver screen, Mix bought a circus, which he eventually turned into a Wild West show. And that is what drew a record-breaking 25,000 people to the Montgomery County Fair in Hatfield on opening day, September 2nd, 1940. Roads were jammed for more than a mile at the two entrances to the fairgrounds, with folks who were excited to see Mix and his group, who had just returned from a European tour, demonstrate their riding skills. Now I'm going to digress just a little bit and talk about Tom Mix's horse, whose name was Tony. Tony, nicknamed the Wonder Horse, starred in over 24 silent and sound films during his career, becoming a celebrity in his own right. When Tom Mix placed his handprints and footprints in the cement outside Grauman's Chinese Theater in 1927, Tony's hoofprints were placed right alongside them. Tony was the first horse to be given equal billing with his human co-star, and he appeared in 34 films between 1922 and 1932. Tony was most known for his intelligence and his ability to perform remarkable stunts, many of which would not be allowed today. Mix reportedly did not have to train Tony, but simply show him what to do for each stunt. Such stunts included untying Mix's hands, opening gates, loosening his reins, rescuing Mix from fire, jumping from one cliff to another, and running after trains. Tony retired from the film industry at the age of 22 after he was slightly injured on the set of his last movie, The Fourth Horseman, in 1932. Following Tony's retirement, Tom Mix began featuring another horse in his films, Tony Jr. A third horse, seen here, named Tony II, was used for public appearances. Okay, back to Tom Mix. The cowboy idol astonished the crowds at the 1940 Montgomery County Fair, demonstrating his trick shooting skills as seen in this photo. He also entertained the crowd working with Jumbo, the elephant. Mix showed he could ride a bicycle as well as he could a horse when he first came out riding a boy's bicycle, then side saddle on a girl's model. The bikes then were given away in a drawing to lucky ticket holders. Here's Tom Mix posing with some fans at the 1940 fair. The gentleman to the right of Mix is Montgomery County Fair Associate President E.J. Brooks. And here's Mix showing that he still knew how to handle a tractor. Also appearing at the 1940 Montgomery County Fair was cowboy movie star Ken Maynard. That's Montgomery County Fair Association President E.J. Brooks again, posing with Maynard. Maynard was one of the big screen's first singing cowboys and successfully made the transition from silent westerns to talking films, thanks to his pleasant singing voice and his expertise as a horseman. Just that year, 1940, Maynard had left the film industry and started touring with his own circus, the Diamond K Wild West Circus. These are a few photos from Mix's and Maynard's Wild West shows. Cowgirls and cowboys worked their horses, much to the delight of the gathered crowd. Here's another cowboy and his horse performing for the crowd. And another cowboy, possibly a famous one, but one who is nameless to me. This is Tom Mix with hot dog concessionaire Jimmy John. Jimmy John and his wife Louise started an open-air hot dog business in Westchester that same year, 1940, which then grew into quite a successful business. Tom Mix's famous 1937 Canary Yellow Cord 1812 Phaeton was also at the 1940 fair. Mix liked fast cars and was known to have a lead foot. The front-wheel drive Cord, which sold new for $2,700, a healthy sum back in those days, was capable of attaining 100 miles per hour. Mix also liked to drink. Sadly, this combination led millionaire Tom Mix to meet a sudden and violent death on October 12, 1940, just a month after appearing in Hatfield. Mix was, once again, driving his Cord a bit too fast down the highway in Arizona when his car skidded through a barrier, went off the road, and ended up upside down in a 10-foot gully. Mix was instantly killed. This is Tom Mix's car after it was restored back in 2011. Coincidentally, Mix's horse partner, Tony, died on October 12, 1942, 2 years to the day after Mix was killed in the accident. But there was so much more to the 1940 Montgomery County Fair than Tom Mix and the Wild West shows. There were the farm tractor exhibits. Remember, this was a time when most of Montgomery County was still open farmland. There was musical entertainment throughout the day for folks to enjoy. Hundreds of prizes were awarded in various livestock contests. Here are a couple of cows being shown. and a big bull, and another big bull. This photo shows a couple of exhibit buildings used to show the hogs, calves, sheep, and lambs. In the pig category alone, 49 4-H Pig Club members showed 103 swine. Here's 4-H Club member Ethel Detweiler with her blue ribbon winning pigs. There were also plenty of agricultural and home economic contests as well. More exotic attractions could be found along the Midway, including Smith's diving ponies making 50-foot plunges into a pool of water, and Dr. Bernard's elephants putting on their act twice a day. Also along the Midway were popular rides such as the merry-go-round, bumper cars, tilt-a-whirl, and the Ferris wheel. Here's an unknown boy enjoying one of the kiddie rides at the Montgomery County Fair. And here's some happy fairgoers enjoying a ride on the Ferris wheel. And a view of the Hatfield racetrack from the top of the Ferris wheel. Here's a photo of the fairgrounds from even higher in the air. You can see a motorcycle thrill show ramp and loop constructed on the infield of the racetrack. And another aerial view of the 1940 Montgomery County Fair. There were also plenty of concession stands along the Midway, this one selling honey hash, the finest popcorn confection in the world, for only 10 cents, as well as the largest hot dog on grounds, also for just 10 cents. Here are some thirsty folks taking some time to enjoy some liquid refreshment. There were bicycle races around the 1/2 mile racetrack for the kids. And the original Aquacade water circus to entertain the crowds. And then there were the daredevil shows. Here's a motorcycle daredevil attempting a jump over 8 barrels. He's no Evel Knievel for sure, but this was only 1940 after all. And from the way his front tire is hitting that last barrel, I'm guessing that maybe this jump didn't have a happy ending. Another motorcycle daredevil jumping through fire. The Hollywood stunt aces were there also to destroy a bunch of vintage automobiles in their Daredevil thrill show. Of course, in 1940, these cars weren't really vintage, they were just used cars. They would drive a speeding car up a ramp, sending it airborne, crashing down onto 3 other cars. This picture shows the resulting carnage. They also performed dramatic death-defying rollovers, kicking up plenty of dust onto the amazed spectators. This photo captures the moment just as a car starts crashing through a brick wall in another exciting stunt. And another view of the car exploding through the wall. And here's the aftermath. In this flaming wall of death stunt, a man is lying on the hood of the speeding car as it heads for the fiery wall. And crashing through the fiery wall. And another Hollywood stunt aces car thrilling the crowd by driving on 2 wheels. The legendary Lucky Teeter World Champion Hell Drivers were also at the 1940 Montgomery County Fair. They delighted the crowds with their auto thrill show, including more ramp jumps and flaming wall crashes. They also performed an amazing stunt using 2 1934 Fords for a head-on crash. A split second before impact, the drivers dove from the cars through the left side doors, called suicide doors, because they were hinged at the back. In a tumbling maneuver, they ended up on their feet mere inches from the mangled cars, arms raised in victory once again as they defied certain death, much to the enjoyment of the spectators. Less than 2 years later, on July 5, 1942, Earl Lucky Teeter was killed while attempting his rocket car leap stunt at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. Also out on the track, there were horse, mule, and ox cart races throughout the week, then a Friday evening smash-up show with the hair-raising team of Jimmy Lynch and his Death Dodgers. Fair Week was brought to a close on Saturday evening with a full slate of auto races. Hatfield resident Rotruda Berger Glover, who always attended the fair, said that she remembered fair festivities including horse races, fabulous quilt displays, huge garden vegetables being judged, and sideshows which consisted of scientific exhibitions and snake-eating men. And she also said that many families looked forward to the livestock auctions which were held during the fair. Growing up, she lived on a dirt lane at that time called Hendricks Road, which was a main entrance into the fair. She recalled that traffic was lined up on her road bumper to bumper for many hours as cars made their way to the fairgrounds. Because of this, Mrs. Glover's father decided that the road they lived on was not properly named. Getting his hammer and a signpost, Emil J. Berger erected a new sign with Fairgrounds Road written on it, and to this day, the name has survived, one of the last few reminders of the Montgomery County Fair that was held here in Hatfield. Just 3 months after the September 1941 Montgomery County Fair, the U.S. entered World War II, and lifestyles were dramatically changed. With heavy rationing of fuel and rubber, the 1942 Montgomery County Fair had a very different look. Instead of automobile and motorcycle races normally held during the fair, horse harness racing made a comeback. Instead of car thrill shows, the Flying X Rodeo was the highlight of the entertainment. There were also Mexican burro races around the racetrack, and farmers could even race their own horses and mules, competing for $600 in prize money. Exhibits were limited to antique wagons and buggies. The Montgomery County Fair was canceled altogether in 1943 and 1944 as all of the United States focused on the war effort. In 1945, as the war began to wind down, life slowly regained some normalcy. Although the Montgomery County Fair was again canceled, this July 28, 1945 article reported that a rodeo and a first aid demonstration were planned to replace the fair that year. A rodeo again replaced the Montgomery County Fair in 1947, with cowboys and cowgirls demonstrating their skills in riding. A rodeo again replaced the Montgomery County Fair in 1947, with cowboys and cowgirls demonstrating their skills in riding wild horses, roping calves, riding bulls, and fancy shooting. Movie and radio star Roy Acuff also entertained the crowd during the rodeo event. A July 1950 Hatfield Times newspaper article reported that the 5th District Firemen's Association of Montgomery County would be bringing a fair back to the former county fairgrounds at the Hatfield Speedway. The association, made up of fire companies from Lansdale, Hatfield, Tummenson, West Point, North Wales, Calmer, Souderton, and Telford, as well as the Volunteer Medical Service Corps, hosted a firemen's fair from July 31st to August 6th, which was said to be a prelude to the reopening of the old Montgomery County Fair the following year. Giant crowds reportedly attended the firemen's fair, which included many of the features of the former county fair, including a midway and educational, commercial, and industrial exhibits. Special events were also held at the racetrack, including professional wrestling matches, modified stock car races, and a giant fireman's jamboree with a parade of the latest in firefighting equipment around the racetrack. Fair Week ended with the amazing Bill Holland's Indianapolis Auto Daredevils, who performed a spectacular show smashing, crashing, jumping, and rolling stock motor cars. A big aerial fireworks display closed out the night. The following year, 1951, the Lansdale Veterans of Foreign Wars restarted the Montgomery County Fair on the Hatfield site. The 6-day event was reportedly as good as or better than the 1950 Firemen's Fair, but for reasons unknown, the fair did not continue the following year. Perhaps it just wasn't as profitable as the VFW had hoped it would be. Whatever the reason, it appears that the 1951 Montgomery County Fair was the last one held in Hatfield until 10 years later in 1961. That year, Hatfield Speedway owner George Marshman made an attempt to revive the Montgomery County Fair of old. At noon on August 30th, 1961, county and local officials joined Marshman in a ribbon-cutting ceremony to launch the fair's 8-day run. The fair included a midway with 60 rides and shows. Opening day was designated as Kiddies' Day, with all rides reduced for children. Kids television stars Sally Starr, Bertie the Bunyip, Howdy Doody, and others were also on hand. There were also over 40 agricultural, military, and commercial exhibits, which were free to the public. There were, of course, plenty of food booths at the fair, including one operated by the William Penn Inn, who was selling cans of their famous snapper soup. This clever and unique sign, painted on a large snapping turtle shell, hung at their fair booth and is now part of our museum collection. Like past fairs, there were also auto races, grandstand performances, and the Hurricane Hell drivers were back to thrill the spectators. Even though there were some agricultural exhibits, they apparently fell far short of the agricultural and 4-H exhibits that had attracted the public Main Street to the Montgomery County Fair of old. And a new addition to the 1961 Fair Midway, the Raynell Show featuring Serena, seemed to turn off most fairgoers. Unlike the Tom Mix Show, which drew young and old spectators by the 10,000s, the Raynell performance was limited to those 18 years or older who didn't mind being seen entering a girly show. The public just wasn't ready or willing to substitute burlesque for family entertainment. Perhaps it was the presence of such less than wholesome entertainment that kept the fair from being a success like the fairs of old. There were other criticisms too. The amusement rides were too expensive, and there were lots of con games as well. In any event, the 1961 attempt to revive the Montgomery County Fair was a miserable failure and never attempted again. 5 years later, George Marshman sold the Hatfield Speedway property to neighboring dairyman Raymond Rosenberger. The last race at the track was held on September 24th, 1966, after which the land was soon leveled. For some time after that, Norman Moyer continued to operate his livestock auction business on the former fairgrounds property, but in 1969, the auction moved to Perkiomenville, and Raymond Rosenberger purchased that 17-acre property as well. The buildings were all eventually razed, and the last remnants of the old Montgomery County Fair disappeared, replaced in the 1980s by the appropriately named Fairfield Housing Community. Thanks for watching.